Hello and welcome to the I Love Me Lab show. My name is Gail Buck, and I'm an NLP Master Life Coach, meditation instructor, and a seeker of happiness. And each week, we're going to bring you an inspiring person or message to help you discover additional ways of self-care, self-love, and becoming a healthier, happier you. So thanks for spending time with us today, and let's let the show begin. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the I Love Me podcast. And I'm really super excited today to be here with my friend, DeLuna. And I know you're just going to love this time that we're going to spend together. She's like one of the most interesting people I've met in a very long time. And DeLuna is a certified transformation coach. She's an ordained minister. She's an inspirational speaker. And she's also a sought after spirit guide. DeLuna, your list is so long. Did I leave anything out?
Oh, I'm sure, but that's okay. We're all multifaceted.
There you go. There you go. And you were telling me before we started that you like to create ceremonies for people, or
Oh, I love creating ceremonies. Yeah, and that's kind of why I took on the ordained minister part because ceremonies really make a difference for people. You know, when you ritualize an event, it goes deeper into the psyche than if you just sort of do it casually. So I love that work, and it's just beautiful.
nice. So if I ever get married again, I know who to call. Or I
Yep.
guess I need to start dating again first, though, before we find the husband, we find the boyfriend, right?
Maybe do a ceremony for yourself so that you feel ready to be in that type of experience, right?
That's true, but that's a whole other topic. Because right now the ceremony for myself is that I'm cool right where I am, really.
Beautiful.
Um,
That's the perfect thing. Yes.
yes, yeah. So I read that you were born on the island of Malta.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I read a little bit of your backstory. And would you share that? I just want the listeners to kind of get an idea of the depth of where you come from and why your spirituality is so strong.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Malta, the small island of Malta, for those of you who don't know it, is a small island that in order to really go into the Mediterranean Sea, you have to go past it. And because of its location, during World War II, it was strategically located for being bombed by many different sides. And they did have naval reserves that were still British owned. But my mother and father were both there. They met because of that. My father was English Irish in the British Navy, and my mother was a Maltese person. And so they met there. And I grew up basically, I was born 6 years after the war was over, and so much of my life was spent listening to pretty much the same few stories over and over again about how they dodged bombs under trees, and how they lived during that time. They didn't have the grace that we have now, in that there wasn't anything called PTSD, and trauma wasn't even recognized as a thing that needs to be addressed. It was sort of just all. So families like mine really suffered from it and felt the effects of war years after it affected my life and affected, probably hundreds, thousands of people's lives. But that did, though. The gift that came to me from that is, first of all, it made me a very strong pacifist, because I'd much rather spread peace and love and joy of life than struggle. And at a very early age, I recognized spirit. What we used to do growing up in Europe, we didn't go to Disney. I don't think we even had Disney. We went to the ruins of the war, the ruins of times gone by. And I remember as a very young child, just I would be taken to sitting when I would be there because I would experience all the spirits that were there, and everybody was just sort of walking around, and yet I felt like all of those people, the spirits that were still there, needed to be recognized.
So you actually had
And
a sense of presence.
yes, very strongly as a child, totally open. And that ingrained in me a really strong connection to spirit world. And then the fact that my father was an alcoholic, and he was like very, very sad man trying to figure out life. He was a young man when all of that, and um, and so I was sort of the brunt of his dysfunction because I didn't really fit in the family that well, and so I would get beat up a lot, and I would spend. And I remember when that would start, I would basically leave my body, go and hang out on the corner up there and observe what was going on and know when I could come back and it would be safe. So I lived day to day, not knowing if that was going to be the day that he was going to kill me. And it really has affected my life in many ways, and in some ways, really wonderfully. Because of that, the life that I do have, I cherish. It makes every day very special. And I remember at one point in my life realizing that I wanted to be ready to go when it's time. I didn't want to go suffering. I didn't want to go any other way but looking forward to the graduation from this plane. And so I went on to prepare in that.
I love that term. I mean, thinking of it as a graduation, right?
Yeah,
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 that's quite beautiful.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So, and you shared with me also that you use music as part of your coaching and part of, because you're a healer too, right?
Yes,
A
yeah,
energy healer and Reiki, and you use develop guided meditations for your people, and
yeah.
you use music in that. How do you incorporate that? And how did that come about?
Oh, well, again, going back to my childhood, I remember when I was two, my sister was old enough to go to school. She's 3 years older than me, and we were living in Scotland. And she went off to school, and she had a recorder. She was academic minded, and she fit with my family well. And so she was able to have a recorder, the instruments that a lot of children play. Well, I would borrow her recorder and go out. And I remember the first time I picked up the recorder and played a note that the dewdrop in front of me responded to me. And I felt like, wow, that was an amazing experience. And then the birds seemed to be responding to me. Now, don't forget, I was 2 years old. And so the memory is has become a very fond memory because I wasn't supposed to be making any noise, and so the only way I could do anything that made noise was to be outside, and I wasn't even allowed to really go outside that much because my mother lived in a lot of fear. I was supposed to just sit down and be quiet so that way I'd be safe. My favorite saying to her was, "Mom, I don't want to live in a box. I might as well die." And she never quite got that, and I think she gets it now. She's in a different place now. So that the experience of having nature respond to the sounds I made was so heartfelt that when I got older, well, first of all, I wasn't allowed to do anything, but I could sit and draw. And so I got at least the ability to do that. And so visual art, became like a focus for me. And I was quite successful with that, winning scholarships and all of that. And that was my healing through high school. I wouldn't have made it if it weren't for those high school art teachers. And so I'm really grateful. But I wasn't doing music, that wasn't at all supported. The art was barely supported, but it was bearable for them because I was sitting in one place and quiet doing it.
So it
But
was more because the expectation would be that you would be an academic, like your sister,
exactly,
maybe, and
exactly.
that
Like
wasn't
people,
really your jam.
people
So,
can't do that. You can't, come on, grow up, whatever, right?
right.
So, a lot of people have heard that. But I went on to forge my way with it, with a belief system that wasn't as healthy. But I had to do it. I didn't feel as if I had a choice. And so I went into the arts, and I'd always created healing tools. So tools for other people to reflect themselves and their spiritual growth with, and that carried me for several years. I couldn't stop, and discovering and exploring what options there were. And then I was gifted a harp by a parting boyfriend, and He built it while he was in my booth at the
He
Renaissance Fair.
built it for you.
Yes, it was
Wow.
built from a kit, but still it was he built
Still.
it
Yes.
and he gave it to me when we broke up, and that was lovely. And I was going to be touring that winter after the Renaissance Fair was over, and I had this harp in half of back half of my Toyota Tercel, and I had all my other supplies for living in my art, everything. And I stopped to visit a friend, and she had a place for rent tucked between two mountain tops with a little creek in front of it,
Oh my
Goose
goodness.
Creek,
Sounds
up in the
beautiful.
Blue Ridge Mountains. It was incredible. And so I looked at my car and I looked at the place, and I'd like to live here. So we made our agreements, and I couldn't put the harp down. It helped me heal because I was grieving that relationship was over, and it just warmed my heart. And I learned to play by playing whatever I felt like, and experiencing what happened when I did that, or what happened when I did this, and explored. And I also used some books and kind of intellectually approached it, but it was really an incredibly beautiful journey. You see the sounds come out the back of the harp up against the body, so you have a pillar of vibration.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
really fascinating.
I've heard the harp a few times, not enough. But I
Mm.
love string instruments and I love the harp. It just is so angelic and it's so beautiful. And I actually asked you the last time we spoke if it would be okay if you could play like 2 or 3 minutes when we met. Are you still going to be good with that?
Oh, I would love to. Yes.
Okay, so
Is
but
this
first I want to hear a little bit more about how you, because I also see you have the you call them music bowls or what do you call them behind you?
singing bowls?
Singing
Yes,
bowls. Yeah, you
yes.
have the singing bowls, and I don't know if those are flutes or what
Yep,
else
those
you
are
have.
flutes. Yes. Yep. I love, you see, the each instrument, each individual instrument has its own qualities. If you think about it, the harp being made of trees,
Mm,
like this came from perhaps two trees, different trees mixed together and different parts of it. And if you think about it, each tree has a spirit and
yeah.
has a unique quality to it. And so that gets translated. And what makes a tree decide it wants to be a harp rather than a door or a house, but a harp? And different woods sing differently. A lot of musical instruments will tap wood a certain way to find out if it's a singing piece of wood. And so, musical instruments have this whole other quality to them. And so, of course, it's got earth quality to it. But the strings are parallel going from the earth to the heavens and the heavens back down to earth. So when you're plucking, you're getting that vibration that we are neither in everywhere or in nowhere. We are like dancing in between that plane of everything and nothing. And it's just such an incredible experience. And so that has that air quality as well as the earth. Now, the thingy bowls are made out of metals. And the real recipe of the old ones, they can't find out unless they melt original ones. So it's a mystery, but they're made of many metals. And so they have metal energy to them, as well as spirit, because the way their sound is and the way it affects us. And
Hmm.
then the flutes have the energy of the air as well as the earth because those are
Wow.
wooden.
Hmm.
Again, they chose to be flutes, not a harp. So each instrument has its own quality, and also it depends on the person who made it and what they're experiencing as they're making it. So all of these dimensions go into everything, really. And so,
Now, you shared with me last time that you sometimes work with people that are in hospice
oh,
and
yeah,
that you use the harp, yeah, when you're helping them to you're accompany them on their graduation.
yeah. I
Yeah.
support them, and I speak to their spirit and let them know that it's going to be okay, and that they're safe with it, and so that they can let go of anything that they may be holding themselves back with. I've sat by people who are very resistant, or their family is very resistant, like kneeling on their bedside, clawing onto them to stay. And, so they could be staying just because they feel an obligation to their family. And so basically, I'm giving a vibrational attunement for the whole situation to transform into a beautiful graduation rather than a big loss.
Yes.
And
Yeah, and we spoke about that. So oftentimes, and that is the case. I mean, it's hard when you have somebody that's dying to, when we're not ready to let them go, to let them go. But
it's very hard.
what you shared with me, if I understood correctly, is that when you're like hanging on and you're grabbing onto them and we're crying and we don't want them to leave, that you're actually, it's not the best thing for them, right? Holding them here.
Yeah, it's like holding them prisoner on a body that is ready to go. The body is given up. They are not their body. Their soul continues on in eternity. They're
Mhm.
an energy being. And to really be able to support them, if anybody listens to this that is losing someone, the biggest gift you can give them is to let them know that you love them and that you care for them and that you know that they've given you so much and you'll always have that with you, and
Mm,
that they are free to grow and go on, and that they will never be, you will never lose them in your heart.
that's
And
lovely.
yeah,
So, can you play like maybe like 2 minutes? Give us a little of your beautiful harp music. Would that be all
sure,
right? I
yes.
just love it so much. Oh, wow, DeLuna. Thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. So that's Raja Regina, this harp.
Absolutely beautiful.
Thank
So,
you.
do you use the music in your like your transformational coaching? Do you use music in that space, or what are the situations that you most typically that people have that you most typically help them navigate through?
You mean what is the thing that I help them with?
Yes.
Yeah, it's most recently over the last few years, it's sort of shifted and become really about women who give so much of themselves. Then they don't leave anything for themselves. They don't leave anything for them. They're giving all their love, and then they're exhausted, And now, it's surprising that that could be a shadow, that being somebody that's so generous. I'm speaking with a new woman, a new client, and getting to know her. And she's done amazing things of generosity. She's been there for so many beautiful experiences for people. And she's adopted a Haitian woman and, given her a home and all of that, right? And to think that there's any shadow in that is sort of like, I mean, she's like this amazing, like she's a wonderful part of humanity.
I just
Um,
want, what do you mean by shadow? Shadow in that?
Shadow, but what? Why would she want any help? Like that's like, why can't she just feel really great about her life that she's
Oh.
just helped so many people? But the truth is that every form of light has a shadow. Anytime there's light cast, there's going to be a shadow.
Mm,
And depending upon what angle the light is shining at that being, it depends upon, makes the shadow either longer or shorter. But in any case, there's a shadow, and the shadow of that is that she got so wrapped up in being identifying herself. Her subconscious identified herself as the woman who'll do anything for anybody else.
yeah.
And there is that myth, that thing we idealize. Oh, she's so good. She'd do anything for anybody else, regardless of her own needs. She'd give them the shirt off her back. She'd give them her home, and then her needs. So eventually, what happens there is that she attracts people that are going to abuse that they're going to be using her rather than really doing good with what she's giving them. And the resentment sticks in, and
Mm.
she's the one who ends up with the resentment after being she's emptied herself, and resentment has moved in for her. And even though she's got all these beautiful memories, what haunts her are those times of feeling resentment. And so that's a really extreme example of the people
I
who've
think
come
it's
to me so
extreme,
far.
but I don't think it's, sadly, it's not uncommon because I think oftentimes, particularly as women,
Hmm.
you spend most of your life in a nurturing, caregiving place, and we're kind of geared to support, right? Support and
Yeah.
support to give, and not necessarily to receive. I interviewed Sherry Eichberger, and she was telling me about her mom who taught her to you extend two hands to give, but then also to receive, and it's
Yes.
really for us, it's a really good lesson, is to learn that because I think a lot of us are very comfortable giving, but not necessarily receiving. And then perhaps like with your client, then all of a sudden you're depleted. You
Yes,
don't know how to fill,
exactly.
what do you fill that up with? And in her case, she's filling it up with resentments, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And it's got to be a two. We breathe in and we breathe out. Like that's the law of nature. And to think we're beyond the law of nature by just breathing out, by just giving and not
Mm.
allowing, it's depriving others of showing up in their generosity too. You
I
know,
didn't think about that way, but that's true because when you
yeah,
don't allow yourself to receive, you're not allowing that other person to experience what it is to give.
exactly. And we love the way it
Wow.
feels,
Yeah.
and empaths are often in this role of giving, 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 and a lot of times people feel that most people, like one of the biggest problems is most people feel that they're not good enough. And so these
Yeah.
saboteurs within us, these different stories that we tell ourselves that were created when we were children, when we were going through traumas, usually,
Mhm.
um, a lot of those stories don't serve us. And so one can have this incredible drive to please people, to make them happy, because when they're not happy and they're around those unhappy people, empaths feel that unhappiness, so they want to fix it.
Yeah.
And people don't like being fixed. So that then it creates resistance that way. And you were just thinking of why would they not want to have
They
help
needed
be
help,
anyone?
I'm giving it to them, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. But it sort of sets us up for blocks, so again, it's in a very, I have a feeling you probably have a lot of empaths coming to listen to your podcast, and it's a really big thing. And those empaths often don't show up for themselves as they do for others.
Yeah, and I think also if you're like, like in the wealth dynamics, if you're a supporter, you
Yeah.
want to make sure everybody's fine, and so you're fixing things, and sometimes it can be misinterpreted as you're taking over maybe, and you're not taking over. You're
Mhm.
wanting to make sure everybody's good, but maybe everybody didn't want you to make sure they were good because they were gonna do that on their own, or was it you? I know, I run into that, myself, so I'm
Yeah.
working through that myself, yeah.
It's really tricky, and the things that may have been somewhat of a problem at younger ages seem to get magnified as problems as we can, probably because ours gets out of control more. Like what
Mhm.
starts out like it's just, oh, she's so nice.
Yes. And then she's so controlling because you just took o no, I was still just being nice. I wasn't controlling. At least that was not the intention? So,
Exactly. Yeah. And in between nice and controlling, they start to say, oh, she's like saccharin, like, you know. And as you get older and older, it's sort of like, it seems that unless we put a check on it,
yeah,
I mean, and again, like, who would have thunk that giving could be a problem? you
yeah.
know but it is something to be conscious of. On every drop of water in the ocean, every drop of water in the wave affects the drops around it. And how can we be doing the dance of our drop without affecting others negatively? We're not trying to control how those other drops of the wave dance, but we are really actually doing a dance with them. And
See, you're
we
actually coaching me right now because what you're saying is very true, and so
mm,
when you want to fix everything, and be that supporting person or that giving person or whatever, well, those other drops might have a different dance going on, right? So I guess your anticipate or expectation is that I'm going to do this and this is how it's going to flow. Well, maybe not. Maybe now I just caused a tidal wave because other people had a different plan,
yeah,
so.
yeah. And I'm not saying, I mean, this can also be misstrued as,
Mm.
are they saying you're not supposed to help people and you're not?
No, no, no,
No,
no.
it's really a matter of balance. Helping ourselves. If we show up purely, in our pure essence and balanced, honoring ourselves, then we're going to be able to be better service, because we're going to recognize other people's gifts and how they shine, and not how they are needy. But then when we realize where they shine, they may feel safe with us and ask for support in the places that they want that support. It's a fine art.
Yes.
you know. you know.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's interesting, and I guess the first thing is looking at it like that. You'd be able to actually detach and look at it like that.
Oh, witness stance. I think that was
Mhm.
a phrase from Dr. Wayne Dyer. It's so
What did
powerful
you
to
call
take
that? Witness what?
witness stance. It's like,
Oh.
just instead of getting attached to what we want and our feelings and all of that can kind of drive us crazy. I mean, that can be a full-time job in misery. But if we can just like step out of it a little bit, I guess the reason it resonates is because that's what I used to do when I was a child, right? I would leave, but I'm not saying to necessarily leave, but just hover above and watch the movie you are in, and
Yeah.
watch the role you're playing, and see, is that the role, is that, and how it's affecting, how that drop of the
Yeah,
wave
that's
is
the
affecting.
thing, because when you're just looking at the role you're playing, knowing your thought process, but when you're able to step away and actually see the room so that you can get a taste of what all the other thoughts are going on, it will change the whole perspective,
Yes,
you know?
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a muscle. So it's a muscle you have to work, right?
Yeah,
So
to remember that, that's the trick
not
right
get hurt
there.
feelings and upset, just stop and
Yeah, And it's
and
tricky. I
witness.
can't say it's easy. I mean, I have challenges that I can't just automatically do that, and I practice that a lot. But then I remember at a certain point after I've done enough of right, and then it's like, oh, that's right, and then also to remember everything always is a lesson. And who am I going to become
Yeah.
through the lesson? Am I going to become a hardened old lady, or am I going to be a woman who's lived in as much dignity and served herself and to be strong in the world, to be effective with the gifts that she's been given, you know?
Yeah, and especially when we go through challenging times, which we all do. What
Exactly.
even though it might be hard to find what was a gift and lesson in that, what was a gift? How did I grow? How did I
Yes.
shift?
Yeah.
That is almost always a good thing. If we allow it to be, it's always a
If
good
we
thing.
allow it to
If
be,
we
yeah.
allow it to be.
And if we practice that enough, at the beginning of new challenges, once we're very well practiced with that, then at the beginning of challenges, we're more likely to have that insight of like, oh, interesting. I'm ready to go on a roller coaster. It will be interesting to see who I become through this. And if you can hold that, like, if you when you do get to the point of realizing that before you get into the roller coaster, the ride does tend to be a lot easier with maybe some dips, but it's nowhere near. I can tell you for myself. I mean, I used to have dips that lasted very, very poorly, and now, I mean, I have some pretty intense times, but I know that I have to ride them through because I'm not going to get the clarity on them until I get where it is, to separate myself from the emotions of it. Once I've looked at the pain and the problem, then separate my emotions from it so I can get the center and show up in the best way I can. And then the gifts will show.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And with your coaching practice, do you help some of your clients work through that process as well, or this woman that you have right now? I assumed it was a woman. Maybe it's not.
Yes, yeah. Mostly I
Okay.
work with women. Yeah,
Um, working through like what we just talked about, working through
yeah,
that process to see what the lesson is, or in her circumstance where she has built up some resentments
yeah,
because of always giving so much, helping to
exactly.
find a different way of reframing and looking at those things so she can
Hmm.
actually start receiving.
Yeah. Definitely. I have a course that I created, and it has 12 spiritual principles, and that's sort of
Mm.
the outline. But as you go along the course, people have life, they have their life experiences, and that's where then it's like, oh, what needs to be applied to this, and and that's where then these type of things come in, where yes, I work with whatever comes up for people, and these things come up a lot. Usually when you start to want to make a change or want to get beyond something, you can be faced with a bunch of things, so
Yeah.
there's
And some
never
that
a shortage.
surprise you, right? Like you didn't think that had anything to do with anything, and it's the biggest thing, right? It's the nut.
Exactly. Yes.
And if anybody that I just said that didn't know what I was talking about, then you didn't. But I know there's a lot of you that said, "Oh yeah, she's talking about whatever your nut is that you just discovered," right? So
Yeah.
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 So you
Incredible.
provided me with a link for a free gift
Oh,
for our
yes.
listeners, and can you tell us about the gift?
Yes, yes. So the gift it is, it is part of the course. It's part of the module of unconditional love. And each module contains many different aspects. And the part that I chose to share with your guests is the coloring book pages for people
Mm.
who like to color. And these pages I designed specifically for unconditional love. And so they can meditate on unconditional love as they color them, as well as a guided meditation with music, with harp music in the
Oh,
background,
how beautiful!
and also just the music alone. So if once they've fed themselves the guided meditation with the music, then listening to the music alone is still got the seed. It's kind of like a kombucha, like you've still got the starter in there, and they may want to think their own thoughts along that line. and just have the music. So they have three things. They've got the coloring book. I think it's like 6 pages. The coloring book, the meditation with the music, and then just the solo music. And I believe, oh, I don't remember exactly. I think it's about 20 minutes. Each recording is about 20 minutes.
How
So
wonderful. And I think you needed to provide a code, right? So the link will
yeah,
take them to a landing page where there's a price attached, but you're going to give them the code so they could get it for free.
exactly, exactly. So they'll need to email me, and they should
Okay.
email me with I didn't think of this ahead of time. They can email me with free gift.
So as they should say free gift in the subject line. Should they refer to the podcast?
That would be perfect.
Yes.
Yes, I'm trying to think of how's it going to stand out from all my zillions of emails. But yeah, if they can put a colorful heart emoji in the subject line, that might draw my eye as well.
That
But
sounds perfect.
yeah,
So I'll include that in your information with the link.
yeah. Why don't we
That's
make it a heart emoji if they can? Podcast free gift. And
perfect.
I'll make a note of that for myself to to keep looking at that to keep an eye out for that.
Okay. And if they can't make the heart emoji, how about if they just put love?
Yeah. Oh, just podcast. That probably will do. It's the color. My eye is attuned to color. But yeah,
Okay.
podcast should do it.
Okay. Well, even if they highlight podcast in red, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And
So
maybe
I will
make them all capitals. Make it all capitals because that's can. I'm just looking. I don't want to ignore somebody. If they don't hear back from me immediately, they can send me
email you
again.
again. No, thank you. It's a beautiful gift, and I'm going to send for it too. So I'm excited about
Yes. Yeah. Well, you definitely deserve it.
Thank you, thank you. So for, final question, this is the I Love Me podcast. And so if you were to give somebody a little bit of wisdom or learning that you've had on a way to show yourself self-love, if you could choose one thing, what would that one thing be?
To really be grateful for the gifts that are given to me, my own collection of gifts that have been given to me. They're a gift from the divine or God, whatever you call this that we're living in, that this experience. That these gifts that are given to us are beautiful, and if we can really honor them and treat them as if they are very special, that we are special, not any more special than anyone else, but if we can recognize our fullness of being and recognize everybody else's, we're going to be living, we'll love ourselves because we will love who we're being to ourselves,
Yeah.
as well as it will emanate out and everybody else will feel the love as well. So,
Oh, that's so beautiful. DeLuna, thank you so much for spending this time with us.
well,
And
thank
I
you,
look
Gail.
forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thank you. Blessings to you and all of the people who watch this. Love
Yep.
you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and want more information on our guests and resources, please visit ilovemelab.com. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share with a friend. Hey, there's more great episodes to come. So until next time.